Good evening, everyone. My name is Kyung-wha Kang, President CEO of Asia Society. And on behalf of all of us at Asia Society, I would like to extend a heartfelt welcome to His Excellency Ban Ki-moon, the 8th Secretary General of the United Nations, as well as Mrs. Ban, Madam Yoo Soon-taek. This is personally a very special moment for me. The last time I was here at Asia Society together with the Secretary General was in 2006, when he was then Foreign Minister of the Republic of Korea, campaigning to be elected the next Secretary General of the United Nations, and I was Director General for international organizations in the Foreign Ministry in charge of running the campaign. And now, 18 years later, I have the privilege of hosting him for a conversation on the most pressing challenges for humanity, climate change and sustainable development. So it is moments like this that truly makes one grateful and humble. The campaign, as you all know, succeeded. So Minister Ban went to become Secretary General Ban and took up office at the UN headquarters here in New York. And I went to join the UN in Geneva as Deputy High Commissioner for Human Rights. And since then, my 10 years in the UN, 6 years in human rights in Geneva, and 4 years in coordinating humanitarian assistance in New York, largely coincided with SG Ban's 10 years at the helm of the global organization. So for those 10 years, I was able to observe from a rather close distance Secretary General Ban's determined and persistent leadership in action against difficult odds, so sometimes frustrated, but ultimately leading to remarkable achievements for the organization. Most notably, Secretary General Ban presided over the adoption of 2 landmark multilateral frameworks that address our world's climate and development challenges. These are, as we all know, the Paris Agreement, which aims to limit global warming to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which seeks to foster peace and prosperity for people and the planet through 17 specific goals. And both of these milestones for the United Nations were adopted in 2015. So as we approach their 10th anniversary, it is truly an exceptional opportunity for the Asia Society family to hear directly from the leader who spearheaded their adoption, as he reflects on how much headway we have made and to assess how much further we still need to go. And Asia, which is home to nearly 60% of the world's population and responsible for more than half of its emissions, will be indispensable for future progress. For the Paris Agreement especially, we are entering a critical moment. This year, countries are negotiating a new global goal on climate finance, and they're also preparing new targets to guide their climate actions over the next decade up to 2035. And just last week, in an article in Foreign Policy, SG Ban called on billionaires to step up and help fix our planet, including through taxes on the ultra-wealthy and fossil fuel corporations. And yesterday, at the Global Citizen Now Summit, he publicly called on governments to negotiate a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. Indeed, even after stepping down from the post of Secretary General, he has been a tireless campaigner and advocate for climate action. Secretary General Ban has also been a steadfast supporter of Asia Society and our mission to promote mutual understanding and collaboration between the United States and Asia, all the while striving for a sustainable and secure future for everyone. In recent years, he served on the Asia Society Policy Institute's High-Level Commission on Getting Asia to Net Zero and undertook in-person engagements on the Commission's behalf, thus underscoring his deep commitment to climate progress in the Asian region. So it is with much gratitude that I ask all of you to join me in inviting Secretary General Ban Ki-moon to the podium with a round of applause to share his perspectives on sustainable development and climate progress in the Asian region. Secretary General.
Thank you, President Kang, for your very kind introduction. And I'd like to tell you that I am very pleased to have former Foreign Minister Kyung-wha, who has been long-time colleague in the Korean government, is now taking leadership role at such a prestigious Asian society. This is one of the very proud moments for me to be here back again as a former Secretary General. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I am deeply honored to join you today at Asia Society. It is wonderful for me to be back in New York, and I am fortunate and happy to be here alongside my longtime friend and colleague, a former minister, and now President of Asia Society, Dr. Kyung-wha. And it is my privilege to speak to you all today at such a vital juncture. This is a critical time to achieve sustainable development, expand climate action, build international peace, and empower human rights. This is our moment to accelerate action on the UN's global goals and illuminate a dynamic and resilient future for all people and the planet. Indeed, we stand on the precipice of a period of pronounced change, one that will have profound implications for our societies, economies, planet, and the future of humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, as a former Secretary General of the United Nations, as well as a child of war, the United Nations is extremely important to me personally, as the organization exemplifies the values and principles that we should all espouse to replicate. And for me, this is not abstract. I have seen the bravery of UN peacekeeping forces protecting Korean citizens, the devotion of civilian aid from all over the world, responding to disasters, and the courage of health specialists providing care in the most dangerous places. I have also seen the best of the United Nations during the worst times for myself, my family, and my country, Korea. Indeed, I grew up in Korea when the embers still burned from the Korean War. In 1950, I was just a 6-year-old boy. Now, at that time, as a child of war, I saw the destruction it caused firsthand and felt the stunted development it wrought on the Korean Peninsula. I still remember hunger pains in my stomach and the struggles of my family to provide sustenance. As United Nations Secretary General, I realized that I was also, at that time, an internally displaced person, IDP. For those people, I worked very hard. At that time, I was a very young boy. I should have been a happy child. We subsidized on food and medicine provided by the United Nations, UNICEF, and also UNESCO has provided us textbook because we didn't have any printing facilities at the time. I studied under the shade of trees. When it rained, we all liked because there was no class. This is what I am still recalling. And whenever I was visiting Africa and developing countries, I really wanted to give them sense of faith and strength, encouraging them not to be discouraged. I told them, United Nations is here. United Nations will provide necessary assistance to you. So do not worry, etc., etc. This is what I have been saying. Now, I was also very much impressed. Under the flag of the 16 United Nations forces, we were saved. Our lives and our properties and our reconstruction was helped by the United Nations. Indeed, it was the United Nations guiding ideals of peace and security, human rights, and development that helped save Korea and its people, like myself. And these defining experiences of seeing the vital works of the United Nations up close as a child of war helped me become a man of peace and eventually Secretary General of the United Nations in January 2007. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the United Nations is a preeminent global governance forum for every country in the world to address serious global issues together through cooperation. During the last 79 years, the United Nations has tirelessly pursued its three interconnected pillars of peace and security, development, and human rights. What is more important, that is something which has been discussed all the times. For me, myself, if there is no peace and security, you cannot engage in your work. So there could be no development. Then what's the relationship among all this? If there is no human right, if your human right dignity are not protected, then what's the use of living in a prosperous country? There are many such countries, economically, socially, they are stable, but sometimes their human rights are not properly respected. That's why I've been saying that among three, they are interrelated, but human rights should give some more importance among three pillars of the United Nations goals. There may be some different ideas depending upon whom you meet, but for me, I think human rights should be given the higher priority among three. Now, we see many conflicts. Conflicts are still expanding while global security architectures has broken down, as seen in Ukraine, Gaza, and Sudan, and elsewhere. Human rights are under grave threat from repressive regimes, xenophobia, populist demagogues, and violent impunity. And development and humanitarian funds are being slashed just when we need them most, right as our climate is changing in unprecedented and dire ways. But we have taken big leaps forward in the field of global development in recent years. The global community, guided by the United Nations Millennium Goals, MDGs, as soon as 2000 began, under the leadership of my predecessor, Kofi Annan, has drastically improved human welfare around the world. Extreme poverty rate has been cut in half by 2010. This represents over 1 billion people and is a truly incredible achievement. And much of it occurred in Asia, particularly in China. During this period, the under 5 mortality rate has been cut in half, and maternal mortality rate has been reduced by 45%. And since 1990, 2.1 billion people have benefited from access to improved sanitation, and over 2.6 billion people now have improved sources of water. And there is still too much work to be done. This is what now current Secretary General and myself, during my time at the helm of the United Nations, over 10% of the world's workers and their families still live on less than $1.90 a day. More than 6 million children die each year needlessly before they reach their 5th birthday. And in 2023, last year, nearly 2 billion people around the world still lack access to clean and safe drinking water. This figure will surely worsen as a result of climate change, accelerated drought, and water scarcity. During my decade-long tenure as UN Secretary General, I am proud to have brought all global leaders, business leaders, all together to agree to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, with the 17 goals, and the Paris Climate Change Agreement. I am wearing the SDGs badge all the times. This one, I think I saw some of you maybe having this one. Both historic decisions adopted during 2015 will be the guideline to realize a sustainable future and sustainable world for all. The Sustainable Development Goals provide humanity and our planet with a collaborative blueprint to ensure the future we want. The SDGs also represent a transformational moment for global governance more largely, in that goal setting itself was a key policy strategy. This was a sea change from previous development initiatives such as the MDGs. MDGs, as I know, was hurriedly agreed upon when the year 2000, 2 millennium, was approaching. The United Nations, they thought that something should be done, but it started very late. My predecessor, Kofi Annan, he hurriedly arranged meeting with some scholars and some political leaders, and that's what they declared 8 Millennium Development Goals. But when I took over my job, I soon realized that MDG will have no chance to be completely implemented. Even 8 goals, if they would have been implemented whole, then it would have been much better. Then I had already begun discussing with the member states that we need to have some successor vision, because by 2015, the MDG would expire. So by 2007, as soon as I took over, I negotiated with the major governments and people. Then by 2010, I was authorized and I got the mandate from the General Assembly that I should prepare the successor vision. That is what is now we are trying to implement Sustainable Development Goals. But we thought that Sustainable Development Goals would cover whole aspect of our human lives and planet Earth, including climate change. But while I left the United Nations, while serving as now a private citizen, I realized again that there would be no chance this Sustainable Development Goals would be implemented by 2015. 2 years ago, I discussed this matter with my successor, Antonio Guterres. Look, there would be no chance. It was not just my idea. I discussed this matter, worked together with Asia Development Banks. Then Asia Development Bank had research by the expert. Then I just recommended, you should take your mandate and try to have some successor vision. That's what I was very glad that last Sunday, the member states have agreed on this Pact for Future. Summit of the Future now agreed upon unanimous decisions, Pact of the Future. I sincerely hope that whether we will be able to complete these Sustainable Development Goals or not, we should not be depressed. We should have continuing commitment. This is what I will discuss with you today, and I will try to my best effort as much as I can. But I have no mandate. I'm just a private citizen, but I hope that the United Nations and Secretary General and the staff of the United Nations work very closely with the governments, civil society, business leaders. This is what we are still confronted. That's why it would be a great opportunity for me to be in Asia society and discuss this matter with you. Again, this is how now, particularly Asia in the world, I think should work harder and more. I'm of the view that global partnerships are vital to mobilize our world, achieve as much as the UN SDGs, and accelerate climate action more and biodiversity protection. Partnership synergizes ownership and participation from all sectors of societies. What I learned during my term at the United Nations is that there is not a single country, or not to mention individual, however rich, however powerful, however resourceful one may be. We normally think that's the United States, the richest, strongest, most powerful country. Even US president cannot do it alone. Even China, I think they are number 2 economic power. They cannot do it. Therefore, my message has always been, all the times, you have all the leaders, all the hands of this world, join their hands together on the deck. Otherwise, there is no hope. Whether we may have successor vision, when there is no political vision, when there is no strong support from civil society and business communities, then we may not be able to achieve anything. That's why our world at this time is still suffering from wars and abject poverties, and still one of the 3 goals, women's rights, this is still not much protected. I am proud that during my time, I established for the first time in the UN history, the UN Women. There was a strong push from ambassadors, member states. One ambassador, I was surprised. I was surprised when I read the New York Times quote. I would not give you any names, but there was one of 193 ambassadors. According to him, his name was there. Quote, unquote, Secretary General is not the king. The member state, we are not subject of Secretary General. I was surprised. Well, did I say that I was a king? I have only mandate from the member state. Then I discussed this. I was so discouraged, so angry. But I didn't have any power to fire him. So I met the prime minister of that country, Mr. Prime Minister. I was so surprised, disappointed. How come your ambassador said blah, 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 like this? I'm not king. I never said I was a king. He was also very much embarrassed. That he sent his national security advisor together with the ambassador. They apologized. Now what happened? What would have happened? He was fired. He seemed to have been very much depressed. Within 2-3 years, he passed this world. I felt very sorry for him. That's why I was able to, no ambassadors, having seen that, challenged me after that. Everybody believes that I'm a very quiet, gentle, and mild person. Still I am. I think I'm not quite aggressive or speaking hard. But after that, I had to change my way of wordings. And I had to be more careful in addressing all important issues. In any way, this is something like a joke, but this is something what had really happened. In any way, ladies and gentlemen, now I'd like to really tell you that COVID-19, just a few years ago, everybody suffered from this. And biodiversity and habitats are destroyed due to environmental damage. Wild animals have increasingly come into closer contact with the humans, and as a result, more and more viruses and pandemics have spread. Indeed, nearly all of the viruses that have emerged in the 21st century, from SARS in 2003, Ebola 2014, to COVID-19 and monkeypox today, share the characteristics of being common infectious diseases that have jumped between animals and humans. When about this Ebola, this happened during my time in 2014. We were at a loss what to do. People were just dying in 3 African countries. We discussed this matter, that for the first time in UN history, UN peacekeepers were mobilized to kill this Ebola virus. But of course, you cannot kill Ebola with the guns. But somehow, what we did, we just blocked President Obama and United Kingdom and French. They dispatched soldiers, armed soldiers, and they were sent to 3 countries in Africa. I would not name. Then they were really trying to separate control the movement of the people. There may be somebody coming from Africa, like Asians, Africans, they have the same way of living. When somebody, their loved ones died, they would, hug all this dead body and crying over the dead bodies. This is very dangerous. So the soldiers' mission was to separate people from all these infected people. So that's why, then for the first time in the UN history, I was able to convince the Security Council to establish a big department, temporary, to address this Ebola. And myself risked to travel all these 3 countries and 2 other potential countries, 5 African countries. I risked my life again. When I returned to JFK, all our staff were just rounded up in some corner to have a very thorough check. Being Secretary General, I was immune, but I was given strange-looking telephone. So please carry this one all the times, wherever you go. Then, of course, from then, everybody, there had to be they were able to come to the office, but I had to check my temperature, body temperature, twice a day, 10 o'clock or 5 p.m., and report to CDC, Washington, D.C. One day, Sunday, I was going out of New York, bound to New Jersey to play golf. Then suddenly, this telephone rang. There was a recorded message. You are now going out of the 15-mile boundary. Please return immediately to your residence. I was surprised that the heaven was watching me. So there's no way for me to return. So this is what had happened. With that, we were able to just clear all this Ebola virus from Africa. So this is what even though I have no medical knowledge, but I am still proud that we were able to, United Nations was able to stop this Ebola crisis spreading all over the world. Had the United Nations Security Council worked as people did at that time, this COVID-19 would have been able to be stopped much, much earlier. Then we would not have sacrificed from COVID-19. This is what United Nations should have done. When President Trump, that's a Wuhan virus, Chinese people were very much angry and embarrassed. That's the beginning of US-Sino relationship going very bad, still. This is my own thinking. I was not Secretary General at the time, but I was feeling very regrettable. There should have been more active role by the United Nations. The Security Council took 49 days to adopt the Security Council. By 49 days, this COVID virus has spread all around the world. How long did it take for Ebola? It just took 1 day. Upon my recommendation, the Security Council just 1 day. Ebola virus is a serious threat to the international peace and security. That's what Security Council determined. Of course, 49 days later, during the time of COVID, you can check all this. COVID-19 is a serious threat to international peace and security. How come this virus becomes threat to international peace and security. There must be some political and strong commitment to address all global issues. And even the war in the Middle East and the Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia, I think all this should have been addressed much earlier, with a much more stronger political will. I am really regretting, it's really regrettable, but I was no longer Secretary General. I'm no longer Secretary General. So this is what we have learned. These are hard lessons, but it's too much unnecessary hard lessons that we are now suffering. So it comes to you and to me and all other countries' people. Therefore, it is very important that United Nations should have a clear, correct political vision. What will affect international peace and security? What will happen to all other developing countries? Now, ladies and gentlemen, I have gone a little bit round way. Now, I'm talking about climate change. Again, I am proud that this had happened during my time. I don't claim that it happened because of myself. It was the result of all the hardworking UN staff and also global leaders working together. That's why it was able to take two important, very important decisions. SDGs and climate change, Paris Agreement were done in the same year. I really tried to mobilize whoever would be possible. Pope, His Holiness Pope, he has given me full support. President Obama, he has given me full support. And President Xi Jinping, of course, all these very big and influential political leadership. United Nations cannot do it alone. This is what I've been always saying. UN cannot do it alone. All the member states should work together. Now, what is now happening, we are far behind the schedules as we had agreed. By 2030, we must make sure that at least 43% of global emissions should be reduced by 43%. By 2050, we must have net to zero. There's no way this will happen as had been agreed. I am very much sorry that people have not been working together because United States and Chinese relationship have been very much strained. When all these big powers are not working, particularly during the time of President Trump, I think he spoiled. I'm not interfering in US presidential election. This is what I believe. So you may have a different thought. Unless we have to control the rising global temperatures within 1.5 degrees by Celsius, then there is no hope. But according to certain report, 1.5 degrees is already gone. We are too late. The scientists, they are warning that within 100 years, we may experience the existential we may extend this whole I just forgot the word.
한국말로 해주시면 제가
Okay,
번역해드리겠습니다.
let me think about that later on. I've been very passionate about this climate issues. because it's not an issue of one country. It's an issue of whole world and planet Earth together. So if this temperature rise is going up, then this planet Earth may perish one day. Then all this, if this kind of thing happens, then at least more than 70% of human beings and animals, all these existing animals will perish within 100 days. I would really not believe it. I hope that this will not happen. But this is what scientists are warning us. The sixth mass extinction. This is what it came to me. Mass extinction may happen in 100 years. Mass extinction means 70% of all living animals and human beings will perish. Then when the fifth mass extinction happened, it happened 65 million years ago. 65 million years ago it happened. Then why then at this time, the most developed, with the whole highest technologies and resources we have, knowledge we have, why can we not protect us and planet Earth together? This is all because of your responsibility. This is our moral and political responsibility. Therefore, we have to work very hard. Now, if by 2100 everybody will be extinct, then this is something we are committing, not legal, we are committing some sins to our succeeding generation. In this connection, acting now to urgently fight climate change must be overarching task of our lifetimes. At the heart of such action, there is no other way than to drastically slash carbon emission on the road to net zero. This will address energy shortages, improve human well-being, and catalyze cooperation. And the role of Asia and its people is critical. Ladies and gentlemen, the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, says that we have just 5 years to cut emissions by at least 43%. This is what we have to do. The harsh reality is that climate change is precipitating insecurity, conflict, and displacement, and grave public health risk all around the world. As such, urgent action underpinned by partnership and cooperation must guide us all forward. It is essential that we hit net zero by 2050. And SDG 7 on ensuring affordable and clean energy for all is the golden thread in addressing climate change. As such, reinvigorated partnership and multilateralism with the UN in the lead can help us accelerate progress on the SDGs. Distinguished participants, my presentation might have been more of concerns rather than a bright promise for the brighter future. It is time that world's people have been frustrated and concerned when world leaders have not given priority to worsening climate phenomena, poverty eradication, disease control, quality education, human rights, including youth and women's empowerment. Against this gloomy atmosphere, the world leaders have shown once again their determined will to change the course. I was very glad. The Pact for the Future, adopted on Sunday, September 22nd, by all the UN member states, is a blueprint to bring the world's increasingly divided nations together to tackle 21st century challenges from climate change, SDGs, artificial intelligence, AI. They are very encouraging commitment by global leaders. I commend Antonio Guterres, Secretary General, who has been working tirelessly with the global leaders to help realize a sustainable future for humanity and planet Earth. But as I have repeatedly emphasized, what is more important is to take necessary action. We can create the future we want, one that is anchored in sustainability, peace, and inclusion for all people and our planet. But to do so, all of us will have to work in solidarity. We must ensure that the UN's goal, global goals, are local business. In Seoul, Beijing, New York, Tokyo, and beyond, we only have one planet, and sustaining it will ultimately dictate our collective future and our children's future. In this regard, I sincerely hope that prestigious organizations like Asia Society, under the leadership of President Kyung-wha, will lead this campaign. Working together, we can illuminate a path to our vibrant future, one that is sustainable, inclusive, and peaceful. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us work together to realize a sustainable world. That is our moral responsibility. Let the political leaders do their political leadership, but we have only moral leadership. I really count the members of Asian society do much more and try to lead this campaign with much more force under the leadership of President Kyung-wha. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Well, listening to you speak.
How long have I spoken?
Yes, you leave us not much time, but listening to you, you speak brings so many memories, SG. I was there not immediately close to you, but one step removed as an Assistant Secretary General. But as I said, you are a leader of determined, persistent, and a leader I always thought who was not afraid of failing. And I think that was exactly what you did during the West Africa Ebola crisis. This was burning, and nobody, not the WHO, not my office, which was the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, not the peace mission on the ground, nobody knew what to do because this was so deadly. It was spreading so fast. Rich countries would not give us planes to evacuate our staff. Staff who came back were just ordered to stay home, and if they showed up at the office, everybody would run away. It was a terrible, terrible time. And I think in the end, the SG took charge, not knowing whether this would fail or succeed, and went to the Security Council. And because the Security Council also didn't know what to do, they immediately adopted and gave SG the tools to send peacekeepers to the ground. And that was a critical point on the world coming to grips with this crisis and was able to stop it. And I always thought your legacy, the climate change, SDGs, were known world over. But having been in that situation and seen how much of a disarray the whole UN system was at the time, I always think that that's one of the most unsung success stories of the Secretary General's term. And I can go on and on about how there are so many successes that are not known because successes tend to be shoved aside, and it's the non-successes that get played out But I also think the SDGs was possible because so much went into it. As you said, you had this vision of a successor of MDGs. The minute you step into the office, you are already on it. And many years of consultation at national level, regional level, UNDP, the amount of consultations that took place before the SDGs were adopted was enormous. So by the time this was adopted, everybody was already on board because we all took part in that. But I'm using up valuable time. I have questions for you, SDGs, but I think you've answered most of them about. So, what do you expect for the next step in the climate change space? We have COP29 coming up in Azerbaijan. I think the financing side of things is a big agenda there. So you might want to share some of your views on that. And I also wanted to ask you about the Pact for the Future. And I think the pact is one thing, but as you point out, it is the action and the political will to implement that is so important. And I think your recollection about the big successes of the UN, especially for Korea when you were a young boy and having directly benefited from all that, that is this inspiration about the successes, but also your very, forceful message about how difficult the current situation and the political will needed is such an overall message of hope and inspiration, but also a very strong message to the world today. So thank you. I mean, that was a very long thank you, but I think I will, if you allow me, SG, I will give the remaining time to our audience to use this very valuable opportunity to engage with the SG. So I see a few hands raised. And I see a lady in the 5th row in black. It's very difficult to see you from here because the lighting is not optimal, but yes.
My question is, I would like to ask tons of questions, but I'll only ask one. What do you think the role, if any, that nuclear power has in the energy transition?
핵 연료가 energy transition에서 어떤?
There are many sources to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. What is clear is that we must stop using this like gasolines or diesel oils. There are many sources of energy. As far as I know, and by scientists are saying that nuclear energy is the cleanest one. We believe that there's a tendency that we believe that renewable energies are the cleanest. But the cleanest, if we clear all this sort of some fear of atomic energies, then atomic energy produces 10 grams per 1 kilowatt in producing 1 kilowatt. Then wind power produces 12 grams of greenhouse gases. Solar power, normally there's a tendency to believe that solar power is the cleanest, but it produces 57 grams. So it's about almost 4 times higher than wind power. Solar power produces 57 grams per 1 kilowatt. Then the answer is clear. I don't want to say about all this diesel, it goes to 200 grams or something like this. It's a huge difference, huge difference. Therefore, if we can use all atomic energy, but there is some concern about the safety. Once there is any accident, then that's the end. Therefore, there's always some reluctance of using nuclear energy. But now people understand that more and more countries are doing that. Then when the United Nations, all these COP meetings, they have promised, each and every country promised that by 2050, we'll make carbon neutral, net to zero. Most of the countries have promised that, including the United States, Korea, or Japan, and most of the countries. China has announced that we cannot do it. We will do it by 2060. And people were wondering, why 2060? Such a huge, the biggest carbon emitting country is China. If we count all the greenhouse gases, 100%, 28% of greenhouse gas is emitted by China. United States, 14%. So if we combine 14 plus 28, 42%, these two countries are producing almost half of all global greenhouse gas emissions. Then Chinese promised that by 2050, they will build 150 nuclear power stations. They have already 55 or 56 some. So it will be about 200 nuclear power stations. I think that will be the largest number. Then people said, well, that's fair. That's fair. Nobody challenged. So let China do it. Then India, 2070, they announced. We were surprised. I was no longer Secretary General. I was angry. How come they go? They are number three countries in terms of. Then Kevin Rudd, I think, just immediate predecessor. He was also angry. And when he was Prime Minister, we had a very good relationship. Then he telephoned me, Kim-won, let's go to India. So I agreed. So we went to India. Prime Minister Modi knew that we would go there to challenge. So nobody would meet us. I was a former Secretary General. I normally is treated well. So I can meet some president, prime minister, and ministers easily. He was a prime minister, former prime minister of Australia. He was not welcome. But we went there. We met the minister of heavy industry. We were well treated by him, but we had spoken out to the media. We met the business community leaders. So it was a half success. I hope that India will continue to do more. Now, this is something one country cannot do it alone. As I said repeatedly, I think all the countries should have the same mind, same commitment. That's what during last 8 years, almost 8 years, as a former Secretary General, I've been traveling around the world all the times and speaking like this way. So I hope you raise your voice. Asia Society raise your voice. And I have read many such reports from Asia Society, very detailed. I didn't know that you have many scientists among you. In any way, this is what Asia Society, I count on your strong commitment. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, SG. We're Asia. Asia Society will certainly do our part. It is already a big agenda. We will make it an even bigger part of our work going forward. But as you say, political will is key. And I have to say, the Paris Accord was possible because you drove political leaders to muster that political will. At the beginning, there was a lot of cynicism. There were a lot of industry lobbies against this. So, aside from you yourself, Mr. SG, and your immediate support staff who drove this agenda, frankly, the expectation was rather low. But SG, you drove this issue vis-a-vis the top leaders of the world, and you really squeezed the political will out of them to be able to sign that accord in Paris at the end of 2015. So the idea that political will you have or don't have, you prove that you can actually generate that by this persistent, steady engagement. And I think that's what your leadership represents, and what's the lesson that we need to learn here. There was I think I asked the lady in black on the 5th row, you, just one row in front of the gentleman who spoke, had raised your hand, right? Well, not you, and I think I'm looking, sorry. Where's the microphone now? Maybe she was asking, you're no longer raising your hand, maybe it was the same question. So okay, we'll go to the gentleman with the red tie.
Thank you. Sir, it is said that if climate change is a shark, then water is its teeth. Because of the way climate change issues get manifested through water more often than not. And my question is, what is your advice in terms of how the world can make much greater and faster progress against the water crisis?
Water itself is, I think, that's, I think, a standard prerequisite means. There are many people who really die from drinking from unhealthy water. Then we have to use this water. I think water is one of the most important elements and factors which really can make our human life, human livings, and also our industries. Then how to make, how to help to have clean water, clean drinking water, not to mention drinking water. I have been traveling around the many countries, particularly in Africa and developing countries. There are many people are dying from drinking unsafe, unhealthy water. Then without water, I think this whole planet Earth and even plants and animals cannot live. Therefore, it's very important. That's why number 7 goal of Sustainable Development Goals is safe drinking water. But I have been very much, I have seen so many people around the world who are not able to have access to safe drinking water. Therefore, we have to invest much more on this. This is a basic of the basics for human beings as well as our industries. This is what I can tell you now. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to this side. The young lady in the middle. Yes.
Pardon me, ma'am? They won't hear you if you don't.
Thank you so much for your leadership. You've talked about engaging the global leaders in this fight against climate change and political will, yet we're in America looking at the possibility of electing a leader that is not necessarily a friend. And at some point, President Trump might be president again. What is your plan for engaging him in our point of view?
There's a little bit of a...
It's not up to me, it's up to her.
I have no power. I have no power. I have not been able to meet him in person, but had some 2 telephone calls while I was a Secretary General. But I was not, I didn't have any opportunity of meeting him because by 20 days by difference of 20 days, I left the United Nations. And after 20 days, he was elected president. Then after that, frankly speaking, I have been criticizing so often, so many times. As a former Secretary General, I'm no longer Secretary General, but I had the freedom of criticizing anybody. You know, when you speak like yourself, the speaker will be very much encouraged when there's a lot of applause. The Europeans are sometimes very cool. Unless you speak very well, then it will be very hard to get applause from the audience. I've been speaking and criticizing President Trump at the time because I was angry personally, because within just 3 or 4 months later of his assumption of presidency, he just withdrew from Paris Climate Agreement. So when United States withdraws from something, that such a most important agreement the human being has ever made, then I could not, control my temper. How come this happens? So I've been speaking out all the times, criticizing. What I said, his name will be remembered in the wrong side of history. Then there's a lot of applause from the audience. Then I found that something to cheer me up. Then my wife is sitting here. She was very much worried. Look, honey, please don't say so. If this news is heard by President Trump, you'll never be able to visit the United States. Your visa may be canceled. Fortunately, this not happen. That's why I am here. And I visited the United States many times. So I still have a very strong passion about climate issue. Not because this happened during my time, but because I have devoted all of my time and energy in making sure that we have climate agreement and we have sustainable development goals. It was much easier to have SDGs. I established several commissions with the political leaders, business and civil society leaders. After having four or five rounds these courses, I was able to get 100% unanimous support. Then the decision-making process of Paris Climate Change Agreement is very strange. This is wrong. But somehow, people agreed that one country can kill this Paris Agreement. In the process of decision-making, now nobody can kill it. It is already effective. But in the course of negotiation, there were 193 member states. Everybody has a veto power. Everybody. It's just very strange. Because there were many developing countries who were very much concerned. So they really wanted to make sure that 100% unanimity, this is absolute unanimity. So I was very much worried whether this will pass or not. At the last minute in Paris, 192 member states agreed. One country was saying in a low voice, I was instructed by my president not to vote against it. Then this would have been failed. So you might not have heard this story. This is a very wrong decision-making process. It's something like veto power now enjoyed by P5, so-called permanent members of the Security Council. So they can kill everything. But when it comes to General Assembly, they cannot do anything. So General Assembly can take a decision by just a simple majority. Most of the issues, simple majority. Just simple majority means a quarter. Then somehow, I don't know who made this decision that all the member states, each and every member state has a veto power. Then I had a very, harsh time, a very difficult time, challenging time. I had to negotiate one by one. Then finally, I wanted to mobilize a pope because he came from a Catholic country. Then President of France, he wanted to speak some other, but it didn't work. But finally, I met him in person. His condition is that my president wants you to come visit my country before the end of this year. It happened December 12th. That was the easiest, promise which I do. Of course, I will visit before the Christmas. When I came back, it was past. When I came back, our staff were angry. Please don't go. No, I made a promise that, Paris climate change is already, agreed upon. So they cannot do anything. This is a bad guy, why do you succumb to this kind of, why do you surrender? So no, this is a promise I made. I must go. But Secretary General cannot move when they do not issue, or tickets or all these arrangements should be made. I cannot do it alone. So I am still very much sorry that I was not able to keep my promise. I'm just a good person, so I always try to keep my promise. So one day, I'm going to visit that country. So I think so try to apologize for my not keeping promise, but I think this will happen, maybe during this year or if not next year. This is a very interesting story. You may enjoy, this is quite funny and interesting, but for me at that time was heartbreaking, So I'm very happy that it happened during my time as a Secretary General. Thank you.
Thank you, SJ. I think we're all very happy that it happened, but I did not know that story of this one country holding you back in Paris. But, the idea of getting that political will from 190 countries and the amount of effort it took on your part to get the international community there, I think is just an exemplary case of the kind of leadership that you demonstrated for the United Nations. And it's only because of that we did get the Paris Accord. We're way beyond our time already, but one more question? Make it short and easy. Young people, young gentlemen, yes. Short and simple, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. First, I want to say I'm a Chinese, and I'm an international student. I'm studying at high school as a senior in New York.
China?
Yeah, I'm from China.
Chinese? Oh.
Yeah. And then I think our hometown are very close. Like from the Pan, and then my hometown is very close. Like from history. And then I want to say today is I'm interested in something about renewable energy. And then I'm doing some research about the batteries. And then do you think is some way or some opportunity for high school or students can touch the UN SDG or like we need to do something for that.
고등학생이네요. 네, 고등학생으로서 그 renewable energy 관련해서 무슨 본인은 배터리에 관심이 많대요.
뭐이?
배터리.
배터리.
네, 근데 하여튼 고등학생으로서 이 climate change에서 뭔가 할 수가 있겠느냐.
I really am very much grateful to you. You said you are a high school student. Yes, I am very much encouraged. I'm sure that you will become a very good civil society leaders. When it comes to China, without Chinese support, there is no way that this climate agreement can be successfully implemented full. And this Paris climate change agreement would not have happened during my term as a Secretary General. But my commitment was that because it was a so hard, 10-year-long negotiation, I really wanted that before I finish my job as a Secretary General, this should come into effect, come into force. There is a very difficult process of ratifying this one. Then there should be more than 55 countries ratified, with covering 55% of greenhouse gas emissions. So there are all 55%. 55 countries, that was easy. 55% of greenhouse gas emissions, that's something, tricky. As I told you, if the United States and China's greenhouse gas emission amount is added, that becomes 42%. I was lucky in that regard. Then President Xi Jinping unexpectedly invited me and President Obama to Hangzhou. It was 2016, September 3rd or September 4th. There was a G20 summit meeting in Hangzhou, but before that, one day before, he invited me and President Obama separately. So 3 of us sat together. US and China just presented me the ratification paper, certificate of ratification. That I had in my hand already 42%. But number of 55 countries, that was easy. Because there are many countries who would do it immediately. So I flew to European Union immediately. Then I appealed to the Parliament of European Union. Please ratify in the name of European Union. European Union altogether 13%. So I think I had already 55%. Then adding 55 countries, that was not that easy. That was not the problem. I even talked to North Korea. South Koreans and North Koreans are not talking. I met the North Korean foreign minister. Look, you have a very strong government system. You have an easier system than South Korea. So when you come, then bring me the ratification paper. That can be done even in a day in your country. He was happy that he came back. He brought the certificate of ratification. That's the end of the story. So I was able to see the end of this story. Thank you.
That certainly, and I think we're forever grateful for the enormous effort and leadership that you've given the world on the climate change and the development agenda. And I think we're abusing you almost, I feel, by holding you back for more than 20 minutes. I think the audience has thoroughly enjoyed your speech and also your wisdom that you shared and the stories of how you led to get us to where we are. And we will certainly continue to count on your wisdom and your persistence as we work through this challenge that is climate change and development. Thank you, SG. And I'm sure we
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.